Granite Ridge looks friendly on postcards, maples, trimmed lawns, kids' bikes tipped against mailboxes, but that night in January, the wind cut like a bill collector. I was standing in my living room when my daughter, Lily, squared her shoulders and said, "Dad, I'm marrying Trent whether you approve or not." Something in her tone snapped the air. She tossed the save the date onto the coffee table. It skidded and clipped the old family photo me, Lily at 8, her mom before the chemo spidering a crack across the glass. The sound was thin and final. If you ever want a dictionary definition of boundaries breaking, that's it. "I'm not trying to control you," I said. "I'm trying to keep you from a toxic situation." Translation, she shot back. "You hate Trent because he's ambitious, and you're not." Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were stubborn. Ambitious, that's one word. Narcissist is another. The first time Trent met me, he laughed about my cute old engineering work like decades of paying the mortgage were a punchline. Gaslighting dressed in cologne. I picked up the cracked frame. "You're moving too fast." Lily's phone buzzed. Trent, of course. Trent, text. "Babe, he's being an enabler. He kept you small for years. I'll build you up. Don't let him guilt you." She angled the screen so I could see it. It landed like a verdict. "See," she said. "You make me feel guilty for wanting a future." "My job isn't to guilt you," I said. "It's to protect you from people who think marriage is a shortcut to someone else's bank accounts." Her jaw set. "Stop making everything about money." I didn't answer. On my desk sat a thin envelope. I hadn't mentioned a letter from the probate attorney confirming my father's estate had closed. The will was clear. The transfer done. My dad was a quiet saver, the kind of man who kept statements rubber-banded and never bragged. I'd moved the originals to a fireproof folder, but the reality hadn't left my hands. I had leverage I didn't ask for, and couldn't afford to misuse. "I love you," I said, because it was the truest thing left in the room. "And I don't trust him." "He loves me," she said, like love cancels math. She grabbed her coat. "If you can't support me, don't come." The door slammed. Cold spilled into the room and settled in the crack across our faces in that photo. I stood there longer than I want to admit, listening to the furnace try to keep up. My phone buzzed again, an email this time, from Monica Harper, Trent's mother. Subject line, "Family expectations." 2 sentences, all sugar and steel. "Looking forward to blending our families. It helps when elders are transparent about assets so the couple can plan responsibly. Written evidence of entitlement in 12 words. I replied with nothing. Instead, I opened the desk drawer and slid the probate letter deeper under a stack of manuals. "I'm not anti-marriage. I'm anti-predatory planning." Dad used to say, "People tell you who they are around money. Believe them the first time." I believed Trent the moment he joked about Lily marrying up. My phone lit again. "Lily. Text. I'm staying at Trent's tonight. Please don't make this harder." I typed 3 drafts and deleted them. Finally, "I love you. I'm here. I won't argue by text." Then I set the cracked frame face down. A temporary surrender. If this was going to turn into a fight, it wouldn't be a shouting match on a porch. It would be facts, receipts, and boundaries, the kind a court respects. And until I knew what game Trent and Monica were playing, the smartest move was the one that felt worst. Say less, watch more, and keep the envelope sealed. 3 days after that fight, I found myself at the Red Maple Diner, the kind of place that smells like burnt coffee and familiarity. Lily had texted that morning, saying Trent and his mother wanted to clear the air. Translation, an ambush over brunch. When I walked in, Trent was already at a booth near the window, scrolling his phone like he owned the place. Monica sat across from him, pearl earrings, manicure perfect, smile weaponized. The kind of woman who calls waitresses sweetheart but never tips right. Lily sat between them, tense, fiddling with her napkin. "Dad, thanks for coming," she said. Her voice brittle around the edges. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, sliding in. Trent didn't look up right away. "We figured it'd be good to talk like adults," he said finally. His tone had that corporate polish, fake empathy with a hard sell underneath. "Adults usually pay for their own brunch," I said, half smiling. He ignored it. Monica leaned forward. "Ethan, dear, we just want what's best for Lily. You've done so much, but it's time to let her step into a new life. A bigger life." "Bigger," I echoed. "As in?" She gave a rehearsed laugh. "Oh, you know, They're planning a wedding, buying a home. It helps when both families are transparent, especially about assets, joint accounts, inheritance, that sort of thing. Young couples need to plan ahead. There it was, the money talk, wrapped in sugar. Lily's face turned pink. "Mom, please." "No, it's fine," I cut in, keeping my voice steady. "Transparency is important, as long as it's mutual." "No," Trent finally set his phone down. "Of course, mutual," he said. "I'm doing well in real estate, you know. We're not after handouts. But if there's family property, or a will, it'd be smart to secure things legally before the wedding. Prenups are just protection." I sipped my coffee. "Protection from what, exactly?" "From misunderstandings," he said, meeting my eyes for the first time. His smile didn't reach them. I leaned back. "Funny. My father used to say the same thing, except he was talking about keeping leeches out of your wallet." Trent's jaw flexed, but he laughed. "Old school wisdom. Gotta respect that." Monica stepped in again, smoothing the moment. "You'll come around, Ethan. Once you see how serious they are. This isn't some gold-digging thing. Sincerely for today." She said it so quickly, so defensively, that it felt like a confession. Our waitress arrived with plates, pancakes for Lily, eggs for me, something overly complicated for Monica. The small talk drowned under the sizzle of the griddle, but I caught a whisper, her voice low to Trent's ear. "Make sure the paperwork covers everything, just in case." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. He nodded. Barely. The kind of micro-gesture you only catch when you've been a father long enough to read lies. The rest of brunch passed in polite theater. Lily tried to keep the peace, joking about wedding colors, venues, anything to cut the tension. But Trent kept steering conversation back to numbers, guest count, cost per head, deposits. Always about money. When the check came, I reached for it, but he was faster. "Let me," he said. "You've done enough." His tone was smooth, but his eyes said, "I win." Outside, snow had started again, thin flakes settling on windshields. Lily hugged me goodbye in the parking lot. "He just wants to make things right," she said softly. "Don't overthink it." "Sweetheart," I said, brushing a bit of snow from her coat. "I'm not overthinking. I'm listening." Trent's BMW purred to life, exhaust clouding the air as they drove off. I stood there, watching the taillights fade down Maple Street. That phrase, "secure things legally," echoing like a rattle in a vent. Back home, I opened my laptop and started searching Ohio inheritance laws and marital property clauses. Just reading them made my pulse slow. They wanted transparency. Fine. But I was starting to see through them clearer than ever. By the time I shut the screen, I knew two things for sure. One, I wasn't wrong about Trent's entitlement. And two, the next time he asked for transparency, I'd make sure it was on my terms and in writing. I didn't sleep much after that brunch at Red Maple. The words, "secure things legally," kept bouncing around my skull like a loose screw in an engine. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Monica's smile. The kind of smile that hides a plan. The next morning, I went down to my basement workshop. That's where I keep the quiet things. My tools, old tax folders, and the heavy metal lockbox my father gave me before he passed. The air smelled of sawdust and winter. I sat on the cold stool, staring at the folder stamped Estate of Arthur Cole, and thought about how fast people can change when they think money's on the table. Dad was a practical man, never trusted banks completely, never bragged. When the lawyer called to say he'd left me a modest fortune, I thought it was a mistake. Turns out, the old man had been investing in local manufacturing stocks since the 82nds. Nothing flashy, just steady, patient growth. 7 digits worth of patience, to be exact. He told me once, "Son, money doesn't change character. It just turns the volume up." After that lunch with Trent and Monica, I could hear the volume loud and clear. I unlocked the box. Inside, the probate paperwork, bank statements from the trust account, a copy of the will, and a simple handwritten note in Dad's scratchy penmanship. Protect her future, not their expectations. It hit me hard, because Lily wasn't the problem. It was me. I'd raised her to be too trusting, to see good intentions where there were warning signs flashing red. Maybe I'd been the enabler all along, mistaking kindness for strength. I sat there for a long time, listening to the furnace hum overhead. Then I put everything back inside, locked it tight, and slid the box under the floorboards, beneath a stack of old blueprints from my engineering days. Out of sight, out of reach, and most importantly, out of temptation. That day, I decided something. No one outside this house would know about that inheritance. Not Trent, not Monica, not even Lily. At least not yet. Information is leverage, and leverage is protection. That's not paranoia, that's survival. That afternoon, Lily texted me. Lily. Hey Dad. Trent says we should start house hunting soon. He found a few listings. He'll handle the financing. Me. Sounds fast. Lily. He says the market's tight. We can't wait. Me. Just make sure you're on the title, not just him. Lily. Of course, why wouldn't I be? I didn't reply, because I'd seen that script before. After dinner, I sat at my desk, pulled out my old engineering notebook, and started a different kind of design, a defense plan. Copies of every financial record stored off-site, a separate savings account under my name only. Passwords updated, everything logged with timestamps. When people start sniffing around your boundaries, you don't yell, you fortify. That night, as snow fell against the window, I stood by the cracked photo frame I still hadn't fixed. The fracture ran right between me and Lily's faces. Maybe that was fitting. Love doesn't mean blind trust. It means protecting someone even when they hate you for it. I whispered, I'll keep you safe, kiddo, even if it means keeping secrets. Then I turned off the light, leaving the lockbox sealed and silent beneath the floor like a loaded weapon you hope you'll never have to use. April came faster than I wanted it to. The snow melted off the sidewalks and Granite Ridge, leaving behind gray slush and a strange calm, the kind that settles right before something breaks. Lily's wedding day was bright but cold, the kind of Midwest sunshine that looks warm until the wind cuts through your suit. I showed up early, standing outside the small chapel on Oak Street, holding a bouquet I'd picked up myself because no one thought to assign me anything. Trent's side arrived first, people who looked like they'd been born inside a country club. I could smell their aftershave before they even reached the door. Monica floated among them like a hostess, her pearl necklace gleaming. When Lily arrived in the white sedan, I almost forgot to breathe. She looked radiant, nervous, fragile. You okay, sweetheart? I asked as I opened the car door. I'm fine, she said, smiling too wide. Trent says today changes everything. Yeah, I murmured. It usually does. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and chatter. I took my seat up front, close enough to see the tremor in her hands as she held her bouquet. Trent stood tall at the altar, handsome, polished, smug. When he caught my eye, he gave me that practiced grin, like this was a deal closing, not a vow. The ceremony went by in a blur of promises and applause. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," Trent dipped her like he was performing for a camera crew. Everyone laughed. I didn't. At the reception, the tension returned like static. The hall was a mix of small-town warmth and big-city ego. Chandeliers hung low over tables loaded with roast beef, mashed potatoes, and champagne flutes that clinked too often. I found my seat near the front, next to two of Monica's friends who spoke loudly about real estate and legacy homes. Then I saw him, a man I didn't recognize, lingering near the head table with a briefcase. Not part of the catering staff. Not family. He handed something discreetly to Trent, who tucked it into his inside pocket without missing a beat. That's when my stomach dropped. Later, while Lily was greeting guests, I overheard Monica's sharp whisper. "Make sure he signs it before the honeymoon," she said. Trent nodded, his smile still plastered on. "Relax, Mom. The notary's got it handled." Notary. The word hit like a jolt of caffeine. I stood up from my seat and wandered toward the hallway just to steady myself. That was when I spotted the man with the briefcase again, waiting by the coat rack, flipping through documents with gold seals. He looked up at me once, quick, and then down again. "Everything okay, sir?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He smiled nervously. "Just doing my job." "Sure," I said. "Whose job exactly?" He hesitated, then closed the briefcase. "I'm with the family. Legal forms. Routine stuff." "Routine stuff." "Sure." I'd heard that tone in corporate meetings right before a layoff. Back inside, the band started playing. Lily and Trent were dancing under the chandeliers, her head on his shoulder, his eyes scanning the room. He looked like a man counting exits, not blessings. When it was my turn to give a toast, I stood with my glass and said the only thing that felt honest. To my daughter, I began. May love never feel like a transaction, and may promises mean more than paperwork. There was polite laughter, a few awkward claps, but I saw the flicker in Monica's eyes, a moment of realization that I wasn't as naive as she hoped. After dinner, Lily came over, cheeks flushed. "Dad, please, don't start tonight." "He's trying." "I'm not starting anything," I said softly. "Just noticing." Outside, as the newlyweds left for their honeymoon suite, I caught a glimpse of Trent shaking the notary's hand under the streetlight. A faint gold seal flashed in the dark. That night, back home, I set the cracked photo frame upright again. The glass shimmered under the lamplight, that thin fracture running through our smiles. For the first time, it didn't look like damage. It looked like a warning line. It was 2 weeks after the wedding when my phone rang at 11:43 p.m. I remember because I was halfway through a bottle of ginger ale, pretending it was something stronger. The house was quiet, too quiet, when Lily's name lit up the screen. "Dad," she sobbed. "Please come get me." The words hit harder than I expected. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "No," she said, voice cracking. "Not physically. But it's bad. I can't stay here. Please, just come." I didn't ask questions. I grabbed my keys, still in the clothes I'd worn all day, and drove through the rain-slick streets toward the upscale suburb where she and Trent had moved after the wedding. I could barely see through the windshield, but my mind was crystal clear. Every instinct I'd ignored for months was screaming at me now. When I pulled up to their house, Lily was standing on the porch with 2 suitcases and eyes red as stoplights. The porch light flickered, casting her shadow across the wet steps. "Sweetheart," I said, jumping out. "Tell me what's going on." She fell into my arms like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "He's been lying. Everything's a lie." We loaded her bags into the car, rain soaking both of us. Once we were inside, she wiped her face with her sleeve and stared out the window. "Start from the beginning," I said softly. "After the wedding, he changed," she whispered. "He said the honeymoon was postponed because of work. But then he started hiding his phone. I thought maybe he was stressed. Tonight, I found divorce papers in his desk already signed by him, and messages with another woman. They've been seeing each other since before the wedding." The words didn't surprise me as much as they should have. They just confirmed what I already knew deep down. "Did he say anything?" "He laughed," she said bitterly. "Said it was just business. That marriage is about leverage." "He actually said that, Dad. Leverage. And then I overheard him on the phone with his mother talking about assets, about something you were hiding." I gripped the steering wheel. "He mentioned that?" She nodded, tears cutting through the makeup on her cheeks. "He said, 'Your old man's playing poor, but he's sitting on something big.'" "Dad, what was he talking about? Is there something Grandpa left?" I exhaled slowly. "Nothing that concerns him. We'll talk later. Right now, you just need to breathe." As we drove, the wipers scraped a steady rhythm, the kind that keeps your anger from boiling over. Lily was shaking, trying to hold herself together, and I could feel the weight of her guilt pressing against the air between us. "I should have listened to you," she whispered. "You warned me. You told me he was toxic, and I still defended him. I thought I could fix him." I shook my head. "You can't fix someone who's busy breaking you." We turned down my street, the porch light already on, waiting. The familiarity of home hit her like a wave. When I parked, she just sat there, quiet. "Dad," she said, barely audible. "Was I enabling him? Did I make it worse by staying so long?" I looked at her, the girl who used to build forts out of couch cushions, the woman who'd forgotten she didn't owe the world forgiveness. "No, honey, you were hopeful. That's not weakness. But it's time to stop feeling guilty and start fighting back. Kind of prize into life." She nodded, wiping her face, and for the first time that night, I saw something flicker in her expression: resolve. We carried the bags inside, the rain still drumming against the roof. I made tea. She curled up on the couch in one of her old sweaters, and the house began to warm again. For a few minutes, it almost felt safe. Then headlights cut through the front window, slicing across the living room wall. Tires screeched on wet gravel. I went to the door, heart pounding. Trent's car. He got out fast, slamming the door behind him. The look on his face wasn't remorse. It was fury. I stepped out onto the porch before he could reach the stairs. "Leave," I said. voice steady. She's done talking to you. You don't tell me when it's over, he barked. She's my wife. Not anymore, I said. Get off my property. Rain poured between us, steam rising from the driveway. For a second, I thought he might swing. Instead, he sneered. You think you're clever, old man. You can't hide forever. Monica knows everything. About you. About the money. Then he got back in his car and peeled off into the night. I stood there, soaked to the bone, watching his taillights vanish. Behind me, Lily was crying softly, whispering, "What does he mean, money?" I turned, forcing calm into my voice. "It means we were right about him. And now it's our move. I would be like this." The morning after Trent's late-night tantrum felt like the quiet before a verdict. The rain had stopped, but the house still smelled of storm, wet wood, old carpet, and sleeplessness. Lily sat at the kitchen table, staring into her untouched coffee. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady when she finally said, "I can't do this alone, Dad. I want a lawyer." That was the moment. Everything shifted from grief to motion, from reaction to plan. "I know someone," I told her. "Ava Morales. She's sharp, aggressive when she needs to be, and she doesn't lose." By 10 a.m., we were sitting in Ava's downtown office, a converted brick building that still smelled faintly of old paper and printer toner. She looked to be in her late 30s. Dark hair tied back, eyes like she could see 3 steps ahead of everyone else. "Walk me through it," she said, flipping open a yellow legal pad. Lily hesitated. "He cheated. He had divorce papers drafted. And he's been hinting that he knows something about my grandfather's money." Ava didn't flinch. "Any proof?" Lily handed over her phone. Texts, screenshots, some voice messages. Ava scrolled, eyes narrowing. "This isn't just a messy breakup. This is premeditated fraud. He was planning to marry you, secure assets, then exit with leverage. We'll file for fault-based divorce, adultery, and emotional abuse, and we'll request a restraining order if he keeps showing up." I felt a strange calm settle over me as she spoke. This was what control sounded like. Rational. Tactical. Clean. Then Ava turned to me. "Mr. Cole, any chance you're hiding assets that might complicate things?" I paused, feeling Lily's eyes on me. "Just a pension in the house," I said. "Technically true." Ava nodded. "Keep it that way. Don't talk to anyone outside this room. Don't respond to threats or guilt trips. Everything goes through me from now on. Boundaries save cases. It doesn't win this side." Lily let out a breath like she'd been holding it for weeks. "Thank you," she whispered. We left the office with a thick packet of preliminary filings and Ava's card clipped to the top. On the drive home, Lily stared out the window. She didn't even blink when I told her how he manipulated me. She said quietly, "It's like she's seen it all before." "She probably has," I said. "There are patterns to people like Trent. They just wear different faces." When we got home, I made us sandwiches while she called her boss to explain she'd be taking time off. After lunch, we sat in the living room, sunlight slipping through the blinds like a truce. "Dad," she said, "I think I need to talk to someone besides a lawyer. I've been having panic attacks. I keep replaying the things he said. Like I deserved it." I nodded. "I know someone else who can help with that too." That evening, we met Dr. Dana Cho, a therapist I'd seen years ago after losing my wife. She worked out of a small office filled with soft lamps and honest silence. Lily was nervous at first, but Dana had a way of making people feel safe without pity. "You've been gaslighted for months," Dana said gently. "People like Trent weaponize guilt. They make you doubt your memory, your worth, even your instincts. Therapy isn't about reliving it, it's about reclaiming the narrative." "I have denied it," Lily nodded, tears welling but not falling. "I just want to feel like myself again." "You will," Dana said. "But that starts with boundaries. No contact, no apologies, no explanations. You don't owe him closure." That night, back home, I could see the change beginning in Lily. She ate dinner without checking her phone. She laughed, once an awkward, fragile laugh, but real. After she went to bed, I poured myself a cup of black coffee and sat by the window. My mind was turning gears again, this time with precision. If Ava was our sword and Dana our shield, then I had to be the structure holding it together. I took out a notepad and made 3 lists: legal steps, documents to gather, emails to archive, evidence to preserve, financial safeguards, freeze joint credit cards, separate accounts, update beneficiaries, personal boundaries, no direct contact, no emotional openings, no letting guilt make decisions. Somewhere in that silence, I realized the obvious truth. This wasn't just about protecting Lily anymore. It was about taking back our power. Trent's arrogance had been his first mistake. His second would be underestimating what happens when two people once broken by manipulation decide to fight back with clarity. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the maple tree in the yard. For the first time in months, the sound didn't make me feel uneasy. It sounded like momentum. By the time April turned to May, we'd learned how to function inside the new normal. Mornings filled with paperwork, afternoons with quiet stares, nights with the faint buzz of anxiety. Ava handled the legal end with machine precision, drafts, filings, motions. But I knew we needed something more concrete, something Trent couldn't twist or deny. That's when Ben Ortiz entered the picture. He was an old acquaintance from my engineering days, used to work internal investigations for a manufacturing firm before switching to private detective work. I called him from the back porch one evening, the sunset bleeding orange across the fence. "Ben," I said, "I've got a situation involving fraud, manipulation, and possibly forged documents. I need proof, real proof." He whistled softly. "You're not talking about another corporate dispute, are you?" "No," I said. "It's family this time." He paused. "Family's messier, but it leaves tracks, email trails, bank logs. If there's dirt, I'll find it." Within a week, Ben had started digging. He sent updates in short clinical messages, observed meetings. One name keeps recurring: Klein, possible notary. That name hit me like déjà vu. Klein, the man with the briefcase at the wedding, the one who said, "Just doing my job." Ben's next message came late one night. Confirmed. Klein notarized a property transfer involving Trent and Lily. Backdated. Paid in cash. I read it 3 times, my pulse steadying with each repetition. There it was, the rot underneath the surface. A forged document could do more damage than a lie. It could rewrite reality if no one caught it. I forwarded the details to Ava. She called within minutes. "If this is true, we've got them. Keep everything quiet until I can verify through legal channels. Don't confront anyone." "Not yet." "Understood," I said. But part of me wanted to storm over to Trent's office and throw the evidence in his face. That's the thing about anger, it feels righteous until it costs you strategy. Instead, I went for a walk around the block. The neighborhood felt different now, colder, more aware. I noticed how people glanced at me and quickly looked away. Whispers had started to ripple through Granite Ridge. That evening, Mrs. Lang from across the street stopped me at the mailbox. "Ethan," she said cautiously, "is Lily okay? I heard some things about her leaving Trent. Monica's been talking at the community center." "What kind of things?" I asked. She shifted awkwardly. "That she's unstable, that she ran off without explanation, that there were other men." I thanked her, forced a smile, and went inside. Lily was in the living room, folding laundry with robotic focus. "Don't," she said without looking up. "I already know. People at my office heard too. They think I cheated on him." The words hung heavy between us. It wasn't just gossip, it was character assassination. The narcissist's last weapon when charm stopped working. "You don't have to defend yourself," I said. "The truth will outlive their noise." She looked up, eyes tired but resolute. "Then let's get the truth on record." Ben's updates became our lifeline. He found bank deposits linking Monica to Klein's small sums disguised as consulting fees. He captured photos. Trent in his car with Klein outside a notary office, Monica handing over a white envelope. Every file came with timestamps, GPS metadata, even license plate shots. Receipts. One night, Ben called instead of texting. "Ethan, just found something you'll want to hear." Klein mentioned a Sanders clause, some inheritance paperwork he was told to track down. "I think they've been trying to locate your late father's estate documents. They're fishing for money you never declared." I stayed silent for a long moment. "Then they're closer than I thought," I said finally. "But they won't find it." After the call, I sat at my desk, staring at the floorboard hiding the lockbox. The metal inside seemed to hum with tension. For years, I'd thought of that inheritance as a safety net. Now it was bait, and I was the only one who knew where the hook was buried. Meanwhile, the town's rumor mill worked overtime. Monica posted vague quotes on Facebook about betrayal and mental instability. Trent's real estate buddies started dropping hints that Lily had cost him a major business deal. It was pure gaslighting on a public scale. Rewrite the story, discredit the victim, control the narrative. Ava's advice was simple. Silence is power. Let them talk. Every lie they tell before court becomes our advantage. Easier said than done. Watching my daughter shrink under gossip made my blood boil. But I forced myself to stay disciplined. Every insult became fuel. Every whisper became evidence. 2 weeks later, Ben met me in a parking lot behind an abandoned car wash. He handed me a flash drive inside a paper coffee cup. "It's all here," he said. Emails between Monica and Klein, bank transactions, timestamps, the works. Enough to burn their whole scheme down. I thanked him and slipped the drive into my jacket pocket. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have, like justice condensed into plastic and silicon. That night, I sent everything to Ava via encrypted upload. She texted back an hour later. "Got it. This changes everything. We'll hold the cards until the hearing." For the first time in months, I exhaled without feeling guilty. We weren't reacting anymore. We were building a case. Brick by brick, lie by lie. Before going to bed, I looked out the window at the quiet street, porch lights flickering across damp lawns. The same people who had whispered against us would one day watch the truth unfold in open court. I didn't want revenge, I wanted clarity. But sometimes the two feel exactly the same. By early June, I'd learned that silence could be both armor and punishment. Ava kept reminding me that patience wins cases, but waiting while your child is torn apart by rumors feels like drowning in slow motion. Every time I went into town, I caught fragments of conversations, the same poisonous script being passed from one mouth to another. At the grocery store checkout, 2 women whispered behind me, "Such a shame. She seemed so sweet." I didn't have to ask who they meant. Granite Ridge had chosen its side, and it wasn't ours. That night, Lily came home from work with her shoulders slumped and her voice flat. "They know, Dad," she said quietly. "Monica's telling everyone at the office that I had an affair. My boss asked if I wanted personal leave." She gave a bitter laugh. "Personal leave, that's HR code for you're becoming a liability." I wanted to call Monica that very second, but Ava's voice echoed in my head. "Don't react emotionally. Let them overplay their hand." Still, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles popped. "They're trying to make you quit," I said. "That's how they win control the narrative until you disappear." Lily sank into the couch, pressing her palms into her temples. "I thought he just wanted money. I didn't think he'd go this far." "This isn't about money anymore," I said. "It's about power. Narcissists don't accept defeat, they rewrite the story." The next morning, Ava called with an update. "Good news," she said. "Ben's been digging deeper. He intercepted a voicemail between Monica and Klein. You'll want to hear it." She played the recording over speakerphone. Monica's voice, sharp as glass. "Make sure the paperwork looks legitimate. I want that signature airtight before the hearing. If anyone asks." She agreed to transfer the assets voluntarily. Then Klein's muffled reply. "Got it. Backdate it to February." The old man won't see it coming. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint static of the recording before it clicked off. "That's enough to expose them?" I asked. Ava exhaled. "Almost. It's admissible if we authenticate the file. Ben's working on the metadata now. But don't breathe a word. The longer they think they're winning, the harder the fall." When the call ended, Lily looked at me, eyes wide. "They actually forged my signature, didn't they?" I nodded. "Looks that way." She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "All that time, he told me I was paranoid. He said I was imagining things. That's the playbook," I said softly. "Make you doubt your own memory until you forget what's real." For the first time, anger replaced her guilt. "Then I want to testify," she said. "I want to face them." The following week was brutal. Every social interaction in town felt staged, like I was walking through a courtroom of gossip. People smiled too politely, asked too many questions. Someone slipped a printed flyer into my mailbox, a real estate listing for my own house, with estimated value scrawled in red ink. No return address, just spite. That night, I found Lily sitting at the dining table, her laptop open to a post from the local community page. Monica had commented under a photo of Lily and Trent from their wedding. "Pray for her. She's struggling mentally. We still love her, even after the lies. I could feel my pulse in my throat. This has to stop. But Lily didn't cry this time. She just turned the screen toward me and said, "Let's give them something real to pray about." We spent the next 3 hours gathering everything: texts, emails, photos, screenshots of posts, a full digital trail of gaslighting, manipulation, and social sabotage. Ava had told us to document everything, and we did, labeling each file like evidence in a museum of betrayal. At midnight, I emailed the entire folder to her. Subject line: receipts. The reply came half an hour later. Got it. Perfect timing. Ben just finished authenticating the voicemail. We have concrete proof of forgery and bribery. Hold tight. I'll schedule a hearing request by morning. Self. I leaned back in my chair, exhaustion washing over me. For the first time in months, my anger didn't feel like chaos, it felt like direction. When I looked over, Lily was asleep on the couch, her laptop still open on her lap. On the screen, a photo from the wedding glowed softly in the dark, her and Trent smiling under fake fairy lights, frozen in a lie. I walked over and closed the laptop gently. The house fell silent, except for the steady hum of the fridge and the faint tapping of rain starting up again outside. I thought about what Dad used to tell me. You don't fight snakes by screaming at them, you cut off their air. That's exactly what we were doing now. I turned off the lights and whispered, "Let them choke on their own story." The courthouse in downtown Granite Ridge wasn't built for drama. It was a squat brick building that smelled like dust and coffee. But that morning, it felt like a stage. Ava called it the preliminary hearing. But I could tell from her tone it was the moment everything began to turn. Lily sat beside me, pale but steady. Across the aisle, Trent looked smug, his navy suit a shade too perfect. His smirk rehearsed. Monica sat behind him, whispering into her son's ear like a political handler. Their lawyer, a slick man named Pierce, kept straightening his tie every time he spoke, as if confidence could be ironed into fabric. When the judge entered, everyone stood. I remember thinking how quiet the room was, how every cough echoed. Pierce started first, painting Trent as the stable, responsible husband abandoned without explanation. He spun it like a fairy tale gone wrong, accusing Lily of emotional volatility and impulsive behavior. Then he leaned in for the kill. "Your Honor, we have a notarized property agreement signed by Mrs. Harper, transferring shared ownership of the Cole residence and a portion of Mr. Cole's assets to my client." Queried. The papers slid across the table like a knife. Lily froze. "I never signed anything like that," she whispered. Ava didn't flinch. "We know," she said under her breath. When it was her turn, she rose with that calm, surgical precision I'd come to respect. "Your Honor," she began, "we intend to prove that this so-called transfer was a forgery, backdated, notarized illegally, and purchased with cash. The notary in question, a Mr. Klein, was paid directly by the respondent's mother. We have receipts, timestamps, and a recorded voicemail confirming the arrangement." That got Pierce's attention. He tried to object, but the judge held up a hand. "Proceed, Miss Morales. I am time to the day signed." Ava nodded to the bailiff, who played the recording from Ben's file. The courtroom filled with the grainy sound of Monica's voice. "Make sure the paperwork looks legitimate. I want that signature airtight before the hearing. If anyone asks, she agreed to transfer the assets voluntarily." Then Klein's voice followed. "Got it. Backdate it to February. The old man won't see it coming." The silence that followed felt electric. Even the ceiling fan seemed to stop spinning. Pierce scrambled for damage control. "Your Honor, this audio is unauthenticated and inadmissible. It could be manipulated." Ava interrupted smoothly. "Actually, it's already been authenticated by our investigator, who will testify to chain of custody. We also have bank records linking Mrs. Harper to multiple payments labeled consulting fees made to Mr. Klein's account." She slid a printed spreadsheet forward. I saw the color drain from Trent's face as his eyes flicked to his mother. Monica whispered, "They can't prove anything." But her voice wavered. The judge leaned back, scanning the papers. "Mr. Pierce, until the authenticity of this document is verified, I am suspending any claim of asset transfer. In addition, the court finds reasonable cause to investigate potential fraud and witness tampering." That's when Trent lost his cool. "This is ridiculous," he barked, slamming his hand on the table. "She's framing me." The judge didn't even blink. "One more outburst, Mr. Harper, and you'll be removed from this courtroom," Monica tried to whisper again, but Ava cut her off with the final blow. "Your Honor, we also have a written admission from the notary himself." Mr. Klein signed a statement voluntarily confirming that he was coerced and compensated to falsify the documents. Pierce sat down heavily, his tie now crooked. The judge folded her hands. "I'm issuing a temporary protection order in favor of Mrs. Harper. We will reconvene for formal proceedings in 30 days. In the meantime, the court recommends the district attorney review this evidence for criminal charges." And just like that, the room exhaled. Lily's hands were shaking as we stepped into the hallway, but she was smiling for the first time in months. "We did it," she whispered. "Not yet," I said quietly. But the tide just turned. Ava joined us a moment later, her phone already buzzing with follow-up calls. "This was phase 1, she said, slipping her notebook into her bag. "Next, we push for full dismissal of his property claims. And Ethan, keep the inheritance quiet. The less they know, the safer it stays." I nodded, though the thought of that lockbox under the floor felt heavier than ever. Secrets protect, but they also trap. Outside, the summer sun hit us like forgiveness. Reporters from a local blog snapped photos as we left, their questions blending into background noise. Is it true the documents were forged? How much money is involved? Will there be criminal charges? Ava kept walking. "No comment," she said, but I caught the ghost of a smile on her face. We reached the car, and Lily turned to me, her voice softer now. "Dad, did you see his face when they played that recording?" "Yeah," I said, starting the engine. "That's the look of a man who just realized his bluff got called." As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Trent stood on the courthouse steps, watching us leave. His mother was beside him, her hand gripping his arm, her expression frozen somewhere between rage and disbelief. For the first time in this whole nightmare, I didn't feel fear. I felt something cleaner, sharper. Justice wasn't finished, but it had found its footing, and deep down, I knew this was only the first twist. There was still another one waiting just out of sight, but for now, it felt good to breathe without anger choking the air. The week after the hearing, life started to feel almost normal again. Quiet mornings, coffee with Lily, the sound of birds instead of gossip. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel like a war zone. But peace never lasts long when people like Trent and Monica are still breathing the same air. On Friday afternoon, Ava called. Her voice was calm but charged with that edge she got when something big was coming. "Ethan, we need to meet. Tonight." We drove downtown to her office just as the sun dipped below the courthouse roof. Inside, she spread out a stack of documents across her desk: bank statements, legal filings, and one letter I didn't recognize. "What's this?" I asked. She slid it toward me. "From Klein. He turned state's witness." I skimmed the first paragraph. It was a full confession. He admitted to forging Lily's signature, backdating property transfers, and taking payments directly from Monica's personal account. But the last line stopped me cold. I was told the money came from an inheritance, a hidden account under Ethan Cole's name. My pulse kicked. That's impossible. They don't know where the money is. I never mentioned. Ava held up a hand. "Relax, he doesn't have the details. But he's right about one thing. Someone tried to trace that account." "What do you mean?" She opened another folder. Inside was a printed email chain between Trent and an offshore consultancy firm, dated weeks before the wedding. Subject line: "Inquiry Sanders Investment Holdings, tens of prize." He'd been trying to find the inheritance before he even married my daughter. I leaned back, jaw tight. So this whole marriage was a setup. "Every step of it," Ava said. "They found mention of your late father's holdings through old business records. Trent thought marrying Lily would give him access to whatever you were hiding. That's why he pushed the engagement, the prenup, the property deal. It wasn't love, it was reconnaissance." Lily sat silent, her eyes glassy. "He never loved me at all," she whispered. Ava looked at her gently. "People like him don't love they possess. But now we possess the truth." She turned to me. "Here's the part you should know, Ethan. The DA's office is moving forward with fraud and perjury charges, and they're reopening your father's probate file. The bank found a second sealed letter in the estate, one addressed to you." I felt the world tilt slightly. "Another letter?" Ava handed it over. The envelope was yellowed, the handwriting familiar, Dad's looping scrawl. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Son," it began, "if you're reading this, it means you kept your word and stayed quiet. But I knew someday, someone would come for what isn't theirs. So, I left you two things. Wisdom and warning. The real account isn't in your name, it's in hers, Lily's. I did that to protect her from greed. The rest will make sense when it matters." My throat closed up. All this time, I thought I was hiding the money for her. Turns out, Dad had already done it for me. Lily reached for the letter, reading it with tears streaming silently down her face. "He trusted me," she whispered. "Even when I didn't trust myself." I nodded slowly. "He did more than trust you. He prepared you." Ava smiled faintly. "Looks like your father was 2 moves ahead of everyone, even me." The irony was poetic. Trent and Monica had spent months chasing something that technically didn't belong to me. Even if they'd won in court, they would have ended up with nothing but dust. That night, after Ava left, Lily and I sat on the porch watching lightning bugs float through the yard. The air smelled like summer rain. For once, we weren't talking strategy or court dates, just breathing. "You know what's funny?" Lily said softly. "All this time, I thought boundaries meant shutting people out. But maybe it's just about deciding who gets to stay." "That's exactly it," I said. "Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with locks." She smiled at that, and for the first time, I saw something new in her. A kind of quiet strength that didn't need anyone's permission. The next morning the news broke. Real estate broker and mother charged with fraud and forgery. Their mugshots were everywhere, Trent's eyes hollow, Monica's painted confidence finally cracking. The headline mentioned, "Attempted financial manipulation of a family estate," but not our names. Ava made sure of that. Calls started pouring in, neighbors, co-workers, people who had once whispered lies now calling to check in. We ignored them all. That evening, Lily found me in the study, the lockbox open on my desk. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked. I smiled. Exactly what he wanted. Protect our peace. Maybe use a bit to fix the roof. She laughed softly. He'd like that. We stood there for a moment, looking down at the papers that had caused so much chaos. They weren't just numbers anymore, they were lessons carved into history. When she went to bed, I stayed behind, reading Dad's letter again. The last line was one I hadn't noticed the first time. "When the truth comes out, remember, revenge is loud, but justice whispers." I folded the letter carefully, locked it away, and turned off the light. The house was quiet again, not because the storm had passed, but because we'd finally learned how to stand in it. It's strange how quickly silence can become a luxury. The house had been so loud for months, lawyers calling, doors slamming, voices raised in fear or anger. But after the verdict, after the arrests, it was just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask questions. Lily was upstairs repainting her old bedroom. She said it made her feel like she was taking back her space, stroke by stroke. I sat downstairs with my coffee, watching sunlight move across the floorboards that once hid my father's lockbox. For the first time in years, the weight in my chest felt lighter. Not gone, just reorganized. Ava called that morning to confirm everything was officially closed. "The DA's office is satisfied," she said. "Charges filed, case sealed, and your father's inheritance remains protected. You're both in the clear." In the clear. I thanked her, then hesitated. "Why'd you take our case so personally, Ava? You could have passed it off to someone else." There was a pause, then her voice softened. "Because I know what it's like. My mother went through the same thing when I was a kid, married a man who nearly took everything she had. I swore if I ever had the chance to stop someone like that, I would." I sat there, stunned. "So this was more than a job to you?" "Always was," she said. "You two remind me of how we finally got out quiet, but unbroken. Keep it that way." When I hung up, I realized that was the second twist my father never saw coming. That sometimes the people you meet during your lowest moments aren't coincidences, they're echoes of someone else's unfinished story. That evening, Lily joined me on the porch. The air was soft and warm, full of the smell of cut grass and distant rain. She looked better, stronger. "Ava told me she doesn't usually get attached to clients," she said with a smile. "Guess we were her exception." "She said the same to me," I replied. "Guess we're part of her story now too." For a long moment, We just listened to the crickets. Then Lily spoke, her voice quieter. You know what I realized through all of this? I wasn't angry that he lied. I was angry that I ignored the signs. That I mistook manipulation for passion. That's the part that haunts you, the part where you betrayed yourself first. I nodded slowly. We both did. I kept thinking if I was kind enough, patient enough, people would show their better side. But all it did was teach them where my boundaries ended. I wasn't protecting peace, I was avoiding conflict. She glanced at me, eyes shining. So what do we do now? Simple, I said. We stop apologizing for having limits. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. We sat there until dusk, fireflies blinking across the yard like punctuation marks to a story that had finally found its ending. Later that night, I took out my father's letter one last time. The ink had faded, but the meaning hadn't. When the truth comes out, remember, revenge is loud, but justice whispers. As white, nay presenting another way. I thought about that line for a long time. Revenge had fueled me for months. It got me through the sleepless nights, the humiliation, the fear. But justice was quieter. It didn't need noise to prove it had won. It lived in the stillness afterward, in the way Lily smiled again, in the way I could finally breathe without waiting for the next blow. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it into the box, and locked it away for good. The inheritance would stay untouched for now, not because of fear, but because it no longer needed to be a weapon. It had done its job. It had kept us safe long enough for truth to take over. The next morning, Lily came down in jeans, splattered with white paint, her hair tied back, her smile easy. I'm thinking of taking a trip, she said. Somewhere quiet. Maybe the lake Grandpa used to take us to. Do it, I said. He'd like that. She paused at the door. You coming? I thought about it, then shook my head. Not yet. Someone's got to stay and finish fixing the roof. She laughed, kissed my cheek, and walked out into the sunlight. The car started, gravel crunching under the tires, then faded down the road. I stood there a long time, looking out over the yard, the breeze rustling through the trees. Everything was still, no echoes, no ghosts, just the sound of wind through the leaves. People always talk about justice like it's a hammer, but really, it's more like a mirror. It doesn't erase what happened, it just lets you see yourself clearly again. For the first time in a long while, I liked what I saw. Summer passed slowly that year, the kind of slow that doesn't drag at heels. The house stopped echoing. The phone stopped ringing with bad news. And for once, I woke up not out of panic, but because sunlight had crept in through the blinds, painting the walls gold. Lily came back from her trip to the lake a few weeks later. She looked sunburned, happy, alive in a way I hadn't seen since before the wedding. She brought back a small rock from the shoreline, the same lake my father used to take us to when she was little. She set it on the windowsill by the kitchen sink and said, "A reminder that we survived the storm." We spent that first evening cooking together, laughing about things that had nothing to do with lawyers or court dates. I burned the garlic. She mocked my knife skills. It felt human again. It felt earned. Later, over coffee, she asked, "Dad, do you ever regret not telling me about the inheritance sooner?" I thought about that for a long time. At first, yes, I admitted. But now, no. If I had told you then, they would have taken everything. Sometimes protecting someone means letting them misunderstand you for a while. She smiled sadly. You mean, letting me think you were just being overprotective? Exactly. We sat in silence for a while, the cicadas buzzing outside, the air thick with midsummer heat. Then she said something that stayed with me. You didn't just save the money, Dad. You saved me from becoming like them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into my study and unlocked the old metal box again. The papers were still there. Estate records, bank certificates, my father's letter. But I noticed something I hadn't before. Taped to the underside of the lid was a folded newspaper clipping from 1987. The headline read, "Local engineer turns down $1 million offer to sell family land." My father's name below it. He had written a note in the margin. "Because some things you don't sell, you safeguard." I smiled. That was him to the end, simple words, heavy meaning. The next morning, I called Ava to let her know we were planning to set up a small charitable fund in my father's name. Nothing public, just something quiet to help single parents or anyone rebuilding after betrayal. She loved the idea. Poetic justice, she said. A few weeks later, Lily and I drove out to the cemetery with a bouquet of wildflowers and the newspaper clipping. We stood in front of my father's grave under a sky so clear it felt like forgiveness. She knelt, setting the flowers down. He'd be proud, wouldn't he? I nodded. He already was. We stayed there a while, saying nothing, listening to the wind through the oaks. I thought about all the noise that had filled our lives, the shouting, the lies, the courtrooms, and how it all led here. To this quiet, to this clarity. When we got back home, I opened my journal and wrote down something I wanted Lily to remember long after I'm gone. Sometimes justice doesn't look like winning, it looks like peace. And peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means knowing you could have fought dirtier but didn't need to. That night, we had dinner on the porch. The sky turned violet, then black. Stars cutting through like small, defiant lights. Lily told me she'd applied to a graduate program in counseling. She wanted to help people who'd been through manipulation and emotional abuse. I can't fix everyone, she said, but maybe I can stop one person from feeling as lost as I did. I raised my glass. Then the cycle really ends. It's just, she smiled. Full circle. As the crickets started their nighttime chorus, I realized how right she was. We'd gone from secrecy to exposure, from chaos to calm, from revenge to reflection. The inheritance wasn't the real fortune, it was the lesson that came after losing almost everything. Before heading to bed, I looked at the little rock she'd brought from the lake. I turned it over in my palm. It was smooth, gray, unremarkable. But it had weight, like truth, like closure. I placed it on top of my father's letter and closed the lockbox one final time. The next morning, the sun rose just like it used to before all of it began. Quiet, steady, indifferent. But for me, it felt like a promise. Because peace isn't loud. It doesn't make headlines. It just sits there, breathing with you, whispering that you made it out alive. If there's one thing this whole experience taught me, it's that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. I used to think being the bigger person meant absorbing the pain, forgiving quickly, and keeping the family together at any cost. But all that did was teach toxic people how far they could go before I broke. Real strength isn't quiet endurance. It's knowing when to walk away, when to draw the line, and when to stop apologizing for choosing yourself. The biggest lesson I learned is that no is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for setting boundaries or cutting ties that drain your sanity. And you don't have to play the role of the patient victim just because someone else is louder or angrier. Peace doesn't mean avoiding conflict, it means reclaiming control of your story after the chaos ends. I also realized that healing isn't about revenge or proving someone wrong. It's about learning to trust yourself again. The same self that once ignored red flags, now wise enough to see them miles away. Because in the end, your mental health is the one inheritance no one can steal. So, tell me, was I wrong for staying silent until the truth surfaced? Would you have handled it differently? Or maybe you've been through something similar. Have you ever had to deal with a manipulative or entitled family member who tried to guilt trip you out of your peace? Share your thoughts or survival tips in the comments. Someone out there might need the reminder that saying no doesn't make you heartless, it makes you free.